This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at the BatmanUniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
I'm back, baby! I'm back!
The boys are back in town!
Why isn't anyone ever just whelmed?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 19 of Everyone Loves Young Justice podcast. I'm Rob.
And I'm Jay.
And this podcast is brought to you and hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. You can find us on social media at ELYJ Podcast. We have a Blogspot page, and I feel so bad for saying this. Like, I'm going to do a Blogspot page, and I'm going to update it, and it hasn't been updated in a while. I think episode 13 of Young Justice was the last one I updated, and we're recording 19, so eventually that's what I'm going to do over Thanksgiving and get everything back up. But if you want to see the Blogspot page, you can find us at everyonelovesthedrake.blogspot.com. So since Tim Drake's in both of those shows, that's where some of the extra content that we will be able to control will be there, be it pictures or Jay's new office setup. Maybe an image will appear on there. So
I do have at least one The Drake piece up. So
see, as long as the Drake figures in somewhere, it's fair game. Or if I think something's cool, I'll post it.
Yeah.
But I'll ask the owner first.
Oh, lots of cool stuff here. But yeah. I'm looking around. Yeah, I've got I have one Tim Drake piece up, but still, it's a cool one.
See, that's all you need right there. We got a Facebook page at facebook.com/ELYJpod, and you can email into the show at ELYJpodcast@yahoo.com. And if you listen on iTunes, leave a review. That'll help spread the word of the show. We'll read your review on the show, which I need to go back through the review section. But I figure once we get through what we're getting ready to talk about and the pastures will be a little bit greener again, then we can kind of, have some fun with it.
Let's give a little shout out to another show that I think we've both been on, the Batman Book Club.
Yes.
Anytime anyone says leave a nice word, I always want to follow it up now with, and that word is panic. Anytime someone says that, that's all I
know. I automatically think that, and I was mouthing it when I did Three Jokers with him. I was like, okay, don't actually say it out loud, because I listen in the car. I end up saying, and the word is panic.
Yeah, that's one of those lines from a movie that you don't think you'd ever get use of, but then you end up getting some good use out of it. So.
And the other thing that I'm sure that you maybe don't quote out loud. Maybe you quote it out loud. I know that I do sometimes. when it says it's Lauer spelled like
lower.
That's right. So a good buddy of the show, Ryan. We're just going to plug shows here on this episode. It's the Batman Book Club, hosted by Ryan Lauer, spelled like lower.
Yes.
On Instagram.
He and I covered the Mud Pack several months ago. You did Three Jokers.
Episode.
Didn't you do another book a couple months ago?
We. The one previous before that was the 25th anniversary for 25th anniversary for Batman Forever, and we decided to do the novelization written by Peter David.
Yeah, there you go, tying it all back together.
Thank you, Ryan Lauer. Check is in the mail. So, the whole little deviation there. I think I had psyched myself out I was going to do Lonely Place of Dying because that's the hill that I built the Drake Church on, if you will. And I decided to do something completely different and did Batman and Son. He's like, I really thought you were going to do Lonely Place of Dying. And I was like, I probably should have. So every time I'm on, he's like, I promise we'll get to Lonely Place of Dying at some point. But we've done everything but. So go check his show out. Really. Yeah. And he'd had a wonderful Halloween series of episodes recently. Yeah. Then I did most recently Three Jokers. Then he had Pete Vera on doing Joker War. So a nice 80th anniversary special for the Joker in there. So
yeah, it's a good show. Has quickly become one of my favorite listens just because of the great guests he has. Present company included and excluded, I suppose. Ditto with myself here, but also just like you said, Peter Vera, Justin Kowalski's been on there, Garrett Grev, tons of great Batman guys, and covering some really, really, really great Batman stories. Some of them expected and some of them unexpected. So it's go give that a listen, and thanks for listening to Everyone Loves Young Justice, everyone.
Yeah. So that's at the end of the show. We're going to plug another podcast and get out of here. So it's been a little bit. If you listen to episode 18, we've kind of explaining we did our summer hiatus. Jay was in the process of moving and my wife had back surgery. So kind of let things, die down's the wrong word, but kind of took a little bit of a break, and we had enough shows in the can that we were doing one a month. And I think technically we let the last month go by and not have anything, but that's just to give you and I both a chance to kind of breathe. And in that point, the half of the show that we've been covering, if you listen to episode 18, the final issue of Young Justice 2019-2020 has finally been released. It's been out in the open, so we're going to wrap up the Brian Michael Bendis era of Young Justice on this episode, or episodes, depending on how this goes here. So we'll be looking at, over the course of, like I said, 1 or 2 episodes, issues 16 through issue 20. Now, some of these could go at breakneck speed, where it's like the thing that I said on issue 16 applies to 17. Let's go to 18,
Yeah, same thing, but about Superboy instead of Impulse.
Right, yeah. Well, the thing I said about Drake. And there's some, I don't want to jump the gun, but there's a prediction that you made, I think, in episode... might have been 18, could have been 17, of something that you thought, you were like, please don't let this be the thing that happens. And that thing actually happened. And I reread a particular issue today and I started laughing. I'm like, I wonder what Jay is going to think about his prediction. If you even remember that you made it, and we'll get to it.
We'll get to it, because I think I might remember what you're talking about, but I also don't remember what you're talking about.
It's kind of like one of those things when somebody says, I didn't say that, and they start recalling, remember you were over there, and you start going, oh crap, I did say that.
Okay, but I didn't say it exactly like that.
Right.
So technically I'm correct, which is the best kind of correct. So
it was funny in reviewing issue 15 for Young Justice, and I think I even recorded a bumper into it saying hey, we're going to say stuff in this episode that we were going to kind of say, we like that they're out there, but reviewing the book is unfortunately starting to become a chore. And the more something becomes a chore, the less your heart is into it. And I was really wanting to try and say, we'll do a 2019 book and we'll go to 98. And then somehow we it's probably due to me, we got stuck in the Bendis era and we weren't finding time, or I wasn't allowing time to get back to 98. And I think you could tell over the couple episodes in a row where it was just, the Bendis era, we were having the same thing. So Jay and I had kind of talked, like, I think we're just going to say, like, oh, elsewhere, this is what happened in 2020 and now back to 98, or something like that. And about the time we say, hey, we're just going to kind of gloss over it and only point out some highlights, is the time that DC decides to end a whole series of books. And Young Justice, I'm torn. It's like, fortunately, unfortunately, because with a book getting canceled that maybe something you weren't really excited about reading, you're going, well, at least I can save, $3.99 on a book and I don't have to buy that again. But then in the back of my mind, I go, so is that the last time I'm going to see any of these characters? Like, I don't want to not read it because I'm not liking it, but I also don't want to not read it and go, well, I kind of liked seeing Impulse again. So were you like conflicted the same way, or were you just like, okay, I'm ready to move on?
No, I mean, it's pretty much the same thing with me. Going over, the tweet that you sent out earlier, the little poll that you did. I don't know if I'm...
and we will get to that, by the way.
I was about to say, not sure if I'm showing your hand here.
No.
Kind of the general consensus that a lot of people say is like, it's great seeing the characters. It's been great having an outlet for Tim and Bart and Connor and Cassie and everyone. I like and love the fact that they at least have a presence somewhere, but I mean, the book just never actually took off. It never went anywhere, didn't actually seem to have any sort of trajectory. It just kind of, I mean, which I'm sure we'll kind of go into this with each of these issues, but it felt like it was just spinning its wheels in each issue, almost repeating the same kind of structure with a lot of stuff. Yeah. So it wasn't even feeling like it was wanting to do anything or say anything with the characters. So, I mean, it's almost like I'm glad. It would have been nice if, it got to go on, and then issue 21 picked up with another creative team.
Yeah.
Because then we would at least know, hey, we'll be able to, see these characters again in the future. It's almost, I mean, I hate to use a term like it, but almost like a mercy killing at this point.
I know.
Because, and I hate that I feel that way about it.
Yeah.
But it also kind of re-energizes me, to your point, that because talking in terms that we would both understand as musicians, it's like sometimes when you have songs to practice and you really, really want to get to this one because it's got for you like the really cool driving groove, or me that cool little bass line or lick that's in there. But you've got this other song that is kicking your butt, not because it's difficult, but just because you're learning it because you have to.
Right.
But then you don't want to move on from it until you get it down solid, because you want to get it down solid and not have to worry about playing it anymore. But, you also don't want to just come back and have to, redo it later and revisit it because you didn't get it down well enough. It was almost like that. It was one of those books that, we were reading and covering because, that's kind of the MO of our show here, is covering all things Young Justice. But it did feel like, the obligation in everything here. But now that, we've reached the end, I don't necessarily think it's going to make me view the final issues necessarily any more favorably as when I read them, when it wasn't, the future of the series wasn't, quite so positive. But it does make me excited to be able to, go back and focus more on the 98 series. When we were texting a couple of weeks ago, I made a mention about, the sooner we get past this, the sooner we get to Slowbo.
I know.
And, just stuff like that, the animated series, that tie-in comic, all that stuff, it kind of re-energizes me to get excited to dive into that.
Yeah. And something like while you were talking, I got even to thinking, we were talking about the tie-in comics to the animated series, and we can kind of play in that wheelhouse for a little bit. There was actually a video game that ties in between season 1 and season 2 of the TV series. And I was like, I wonder if we could do a commentary, because I'm sure it's out there on YouTube, that somebody took all of the animation, like movie sequences, and put them all together. Because I remember playing the game with my wife. It was actually kind of a co-op game. You could pick between, I think, 4 or 5 different characters.
Young Justice Legacy, all cutscenes, game movie, 48 minutes and 2 seconds.
See, there you that could be. I pull in a Seinfeld reference. That's the show, you know. So, yeah, there are plenty of opportunities for Young Justice. And I was even flipping through, like, even in the 98 book, you know, they dip over into Supergirl, and they dip over into, you know, the Robin title, and they dip over into the Impulse title, and some other events going on. So we were talking about the poll, so I'm going to pull this up. I wasn't thinking clearly enough. I probably should have put this out in the beginning of the week, but in the 4 or 5 hours that I've had it up, we've had about 11 votes, which I thought that's pretty good in just a 4 or 5 hour span. And it's about where you think it is. So it'll be up for 20 hours. By the time you're hearing this episode, you won't be able to vote on it, but go back to the Twitter feed and you can leave some questions and comments. And there are some in here, so I'll read those. The tweet that I had put up was, what were your thoughts about the 2019-2020 Bendis-era of Young Justice? Also leave a comment. We'll add it to the show tonight. So I put up 4 possibilities, and I was using the animated series and using Dick Grayson's, you know, the Dick Grayson isms that he would use as "that's so Crash" from Impulse as being "that's great," feeling the Aster is something that's good, and of course whelmed would be okay, and feeling the mode is bad. The way that it arrives here at 9:36 my time in Ohio is that 54.5% have said they were whelmed okay by the book, which, I mean, if you've been listening to the show long enough, I think that's pretty much the baseline where people are at. There's a 2-way tie for feeling the mode bad and feeling the Aster is good at 18.2%, and then the great comment, or that's so Crash. The Crash is at 9.1%. And then we have we have 3 comments here from BJ Shea. It makes me want to read the OG series again. Fun to see the gang together, but the book just never went anywhere. The Devil's Advocate says, glad the characters are back together, but the delivery was just meh. It made me want to read the original run and Teen Titans with the new crew again. With that crew again. And then Isaiah Stevens here says, untapped potential that never got a chance to grow, which is pretty much what we have been saying here. So
yeah, but I mean, I think that, you know, in the silver lining of, you know, at least faint praise is, you know, if something makes you want to read something else, you know, it's like, you know, I liked getting the characters here, but it made me want to go and read more stories about those characters. Yeah. You know, that's never a bad thing. I mean, even if it is, you know, it was great seeing them. It wasn't that great of a book. It made me want to read the better book. But, you know, that's, at the very least, it didn't completely burn you for these characters and the title in general. So I'd say that's at least a somewhat positive reaction, because I mean, that's the same boat I'm in. You know, like I just said, you know, I'm re-energized and excited to be able to focus more on the other Young Justice titles over the years, now that we're moving past this one.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see where some of these characters go, and then we've got Future State looming, and that's an entire conversation that's an entire conversation all on its own, and everything.
Go on with that.
yeah. But we're not gonna talk about that right now. So let's just start this, and we'll look at the cover for issue 16 of Young Justice, the emancipation of Bart Allen. I want to say the fantabulous emancipation of one Bart Allen. That's kind of stuck in my head. So cool cover, and I didn't realize this, that Goldie Winsick, if I'm saying that right, probably not, is doing the art, but L. Tabe and John Timms are doing the covers for all the rest of the book. So I didn't even remember, was Tim's last book drawing the interiors, was that 15?
It might have been, because Godlewski, I think is how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been on it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Yeah,
he's on
I
it
just
for the
looked.
rest of the series.
Yeah, Timms and Godlewski, as you said, or I'm going to butcher, they were both on 15. So Timms' last book was 14.
Yeah, I mean, this is a cool cover, though. I like the, really kind of fractally look of it with the different, like Bart in the middle, but then all the other Barts running around him, almost like a kaleidoscope. And then, the various scenes in the backgrounds, which are just kind of nothing really stands out, but it does give you an idea of what the story that Bart's going to tell in here. But yeah, this is definitely, I think, of this run of issues that we're on right now. I think this is far and away my favorite cover of the lot.
Yeah, I definitely like this one. Again, like you said, just the little bit of kind of almost everything that we've done throughout the series is pretty much encapsulated in some degree in this, in some manner. Let's just get into this. I did like this. I don't know if we've had a really full Bart Allen Impulse issue. Probably, I'm going to get, sounds bad to say this, I'm going to get the good out of the way first. I did like the story that they were trying to tell with Impulse, and I'm trying to remember if it was this book or not. Yes, is when he is bouncing around his own multiverse. So I can't remember what the event was in pre-New 52 continuity that how Bart died. Did he die at the hands of Cluemaster, like it shows in here, with him getting sucked into like the mirror? Because the book, he's telling Connor kind of what's happened this whole entire time, that he was essentially like zapped into nothingness and then he found his way out. And I was trying to figure out, is this replaying part of his original history and how he died?
I'm not sure, because I mean, of the three, at least the boys, Bart, Tim, and Connor, it's Bart that I have the least, I don't know if like extracurricular knowledge.
I'm the same way.
Like what I've read of his solo book, I love, but I haven't read much of it. And then I know, going on, he eventually, becomes Kid Flash after, I don't remember if it's after or kind of it happens during it, but, Deathstroke shoots his kneecap out.
Yeah.
He has to get it replaced. And then he, absorbs all the information from a library by like just reading everything. I think he was aged up quite a bit at one point, and he actually became the Flash for a minute or two.
Yeah.
In that weird period where Wally was maybe not there, Barry had just come back, and then Bart ages up and everything. I don't know. Like I said, I mean, Flash... any sort of Flash facts, I'm a little nearly as well versed as like the Batman and Superman families, so I'm not entirely positive.
Yeah,
this could just be the easy out, because it makes sense,
Yeah,
Mirror Master just doing something that messes with the Speed Force, which causes Bart to run across different multiverses.
The other little bit of goodwill. I'm sorry, Bendis, but I like Bart and Connor's relationship in this. Like going clear back to issue 1, or probably technically issue 3, where Connor finally finds Bart, and we had laughed in discussing that issue where Bart is hugging Connor, and Connor's like, "Okay, you can let go." And he's like, "Nope, not gonna." It was such a cute moment where I was like, "Oh, that's really cool to see." And then over time, it's these cute moments, or it's these little things of like, "Oh, that looks like the thing that I love, but it's not actually the thing that I love." It's like Mirror Master. It's like you're holding an image to the thing that I like, but the mirror is like Funhouse mirrors. It's distorting it a little bit. So, but I did like this where Bart, for the first time in this book, is not running. He's sitting, he's talking, and getting all of the stuff out to Connor.
Yeah, and so I like the one line that Bart has at one point where he's like, if I stop running, all that's going to, what is it? That maybe I run around so much because when I stop, I have to deal with actual stuff.
Yeah.
That was a really good, mature line. And yeah, I mean, in broad strokes, like you, I really like that this is focused on Bart and Connor and their friendship. I like that. I mean, some of the details, is where it kind of loses me a little bit, or in some cases a lot. But I mean, just the general idea of it being these two friends who have both been lost for so long, reconnecting to try to figure themselves out again. I liked that idea, and the execution of it, at least in general, I had a positive reaction to.
So, the flip side of the coin,
the rest of it,
the rest of it is, I think it's putting the exclamation point on the thing that we've been asking since issue 1 that is constantly brought up over and over again, is what happened to them. Why don't they know what they know? Where have they been? And I'm glad I don't have to say this name much longer, so I can get the Drake back in a positive way for the other show. But Drake shows up. Tim shows up and says, let's go to the Hall of Justice to see if we can get to the bottom of the mystery of us. And I'm like, I don't know if we knew at 16 the book was ending or not, but after I read this, I'm like, 16 issues and we're still asking the same question with like, because of space-timey stuff.
Yeah.
And, sorry, go ahead.
I was more favorable to this than the Superboy issue that was pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Because even though this answered the question with an answer that we pretty much already knew, that we could have figured out on our own, the thing about the Superboy issue was it, replayed scenes from this exact series trying to tell us something new. And it wasn't anything new. And it was, it was really almost the literal definition of filler. It was, we don't have anything to put here, so we're just going to, write a bunch of words, put some images you've already seen from previous issues, and make it seem like we're answering questions. So even though Bart's, finding out that Bart disappeared because he was running through the multiverse and going to different Earths, we could have guessed that. In fact, I had pretty much guessed that. I'm sure you had pretty much guessed that. I'm pretty sure everybody had guessed that. Is that, he's a Flash. Flashes get lost in the Speed Force and in the multiverse all the time. So, it's something that we could have guessed. But the approach here was at least to try to get us on the same page as Bart, to see what he went through in all this. And so I did like it a little bit more, even though it was kind of the same thing. It wasn't really telling us anything revelatory that either we didn't already know or that we couldn't have pieced together. And even in the manner that they told us, just waiting 16 issues to find this out, it was too little too late. There were emotional beats, like when Bart, almost, starts breaking down, in front of the Hall of Justice, where he finds the statues of Sissy Cassie, himself, and Tim, and he just doesn't know how to compose himself. It's just, I don't know if this had come earlier, if the series actually cared enough to to spend time focusing on the characters themselves and not on the circumstances and things that have happened to them, it would have landed better. But this whole series has almost been like, here are some mysteries about characters that you love. Let's find out, the answers to the mysteries themselves without actually giving us the characters that we love. Like, even though we both have, strong emotional attachments to, Tim especially, but Connor and Bart and all the others, there really isn't any reason to care. There's no emotional attachment to anything here.
No. And I think I'm just going to repeat what you just said here. But I think the thing that grabbed me the most the first time I saw it was him standing in front of the Hall of Justice at the memorial. Like, at this point, I think at issue 6, I would have been like, oh my gosh, what happened? How did these characters happen to die in this universe? Like, oh my gosh, my boy was one of them, and Bart was one of them. Now I'm looking at it going, oh, that would have been a story, and I think I'm supposed to care about it, but I don't. I should, and I feel bad for saying that. It's just this... In some books where you're reading it, you go, oh, this is clearly to pad out the trade. And I wouldn't say the completest to me, because I've said through the whole show, I've bought double covers for both these. I've loved most of the covers in Rebirth, and I've even said that I think in a lot of cases, the B cover is usually far superior than the normal standard cover.
We didn't talk about that one with this one. That is not the case with this issue.
No, that is not the case of...
It's cute, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's about it. So we didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
Them eating pizza and Connor floating above them, handing out pizza boxes.
What is it, like chibi looking? Like
yes.
That's again, it's cute, but it's not my favorite.
Yeah. I did it because of Tim. But so it's one of those where people say, putting your money where your mouth is. This would have been very easy to go, all right, I don't need 2 covers for this book that I'm, to use a Young Justice term, whelmed on. But I was invested in the idea, and I'm kind of told my wife, I was like, hey, I'm going to be down 2 books.
Yeah.
We won't belabor 16, but I get my point was you can look at a trade. If I was going to buy the trade for this, which I'm not going to, a lot of these trades I would go filler. Like where's the meat of it? I think I said before, you could probably throw out half of these books, and really a 20-issue book, you could do 10 issues of this series and still get the same through line and not be really out much of the story.
Completely agree. To end this issue on a high note, it looks nice. There's some nice looking pages. Godlewski's style complements Tim's very, very well. So it's not jarring that there was an artist swap. Some of the stuff, even though I don't care one bit about Superboy's fight with that green monster, it's staged fairly well. I do love some of the coloring work from it's El Tape, right? From Gabe El Tape. Yeah, he was doing it. Like when Bart loses consciousness and then the panels get progressively grayer and grayer before it's black and white. That's really cool. And then, that double page spread where, he's running across the different universes.
Yeah. I like that page.
Yeah, it's a very Flash page, that we've seen a million times with all the flashes. But it's still, a really cool sequence. And even Mirror Master's effect on Bart where he kind of becomes globular as he's ripped apart. That looks really cool. And again, even though the emotional impact of it didn't hit, seeing Bart's boot on the ground in front of the Hall of Justice, that's really good framing and some really good silent storytelling there. But again, it's just not an awful lot happens that gives me a reason to care about what's happening here.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to issue 17 of Young Justice. Now, this is a cover. I think you said this is the 16 was probably the better of the covers that we're looking at. And I actually have 2 covers that I like more than 16. And it would be this one and 18 when we get to it for a different reason.
Okay.
But I like the left half of this cover. Not that I don't like the right half, but...
there's good reason not to like some of the right up. But no, this is a cool cover in and of itself, even with the Drake. But I do like the old school Young Justice versus the, new school looks for the boys. That's really cool. And this variant is actually, pretty good too. I'm not sure who did it.
I'm looking that up here.
Let's see. Mirka and Dolfo. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
So it's a cool cover too. Just one of those cool, hero Pose covers, but it's not bad. But I do like this cover. I didn't mean that as a slight to the cover. No. Say any of them were bad, but I just liked the weird kind of fractally look of the Impulse cover. I just thought it was really creative and clever.
Oh yeah, as far as from like an art standpoint, everything else. If this was the Drake podcast, I'd be going, "Oh, this is poster worthy." Like I could see going to John Tim's booth and seeing the cover for 17 as a print.
Yeah, totally.
to sign. I don't know if 16 works well enough that he would probably do a print, but this one, 18, probably 20 would be the prints that you would probably find at his booth. Hero poses for my favorite characters, slap them on the wall, and they would be great. And the title for this one says "Growing Pains" on the front. So
this is also really good because with Bart's updated costume, there are aspects of it that I look at, and I'm like, is that different than it was on his original costume?
Yeah.
So I had to go look it up, but it has them side by side here, and I'm honestly kind of surprised that the original costume has kind of the bolder, thicker lightning bolt running around the side of his torso, because that looks like something that in the modern day and age where everything needs all sorts of piping and paneling and everything, you'd think that would have it, but the newer one is at least a little more streamlined in that regard.
And I actually thought I bet they got the image flipped, and I went to a 98 book and I'm like, nope, that's the right costume. So I had the same thought of boy, the one on the left really looks like it's busier. That's got to be an artist mistake. No, it's just a Rob mistake.
And you got a rad leather jacket Superboy and Tim in his classic and incredible costume.
Classic, right? Very good. Definitely not talking about the right-hand side of the book.
Not talking about the Drake. Nope.
The Drake costume. So this issue takes place actually right after the events of Leviathan. So back in the Action Comics era that we had briefly talked about in an episode, this is the aftermath of that event that was going on in there. So that was a little different to take a detour. I felt like we've done two things in this book. We've talked ad nauseum about them getting out of the multiverse, and then once they get out of the multiverse, they're dropped right back in another event. So the book didn't really have time to go, all right, we spent 10 issues with them trying to figure out how to get home. Now that they're home, now we got this world event going on that we don't get a chance to start a new story. That being said, I did like these little moments in here that, again, this was something I think we wanted initially. I want to see a moment with Wonder Woman and Wonder Girl and Robin and Batman and, et cetera, and seeing how the other characters are going to, Jenny and Amethyst, which I want to get to her in just a minute here. But seeing them all interact, and this opens up with, and I wasn't sure what this was when I first read it, but you find out it's a father and daughter that has a food truck, and they're here during the cleanup, and the father is explaining to his daughter, we all have jobs to do. This is what he has taken on to how he can give back to his community, and you start realizing over the first couple pages that they work in the food service, a mobile food truck. So her going out and doing something as simple as giving water, I work for a home distribution warehouse, and anytime there's a natural disaster in the world, we're tied with FEMA. So something as simple as, I know when I help put generators and bottles of water and cleaning supplies going to a truck, that even though I physically wasn't there during the cleanup, I know the things that I'm doing at my job. Somebody took that bucket to help clean their house or gather their belongings, or the person that's just so down, or somebody that's working is taking that drink of water that I got to be part of that chain. So that's kind of the through point of this issue, that even the smallest little thing can turn out to be what you think is so small and insignificant could be something really great and impactful to somebody else. So I liked the issue for that. So how did you feel about the narrative of this story?
I liked
Well, Rob, let me tell you.
like I said, I mean, going to be a lot of copy and paste here. I liked the intent. I love the idea of focusing on a quote unquote regular person in the midst of, a huge superhero battle or whatever. I mean, that's what I loved, the Gotham Central comic book. Batman, Batman was barely in it, but his presence was still felt, but you also didn't really care because the character work with the GCPD was just so good. So I love the idea of taking, even with like Superman's supporting cast, one of my favorite books of the past several years, if not of all time, I'm not going to lie, was Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen.
I've heard great things about the book, and I have not read it.
It is, I'm repeating myself here because I would say it anytime someone posts about it. It is art. It is incredible. It's both heartfelt when it needs to be, and incredibly goofy and silly and weird and Silver Agey when it wants to be. And they both work perfectly together. It is genuinely one of the best comic book series I have ever read in my life.
Wow.
That's how good it was. But Superman is in it, but he's barely in it. It's mostly about Jimmy Olsen. And so even the rest of Superman's, supporting cast is great. I love popping in and seeing what Bibbo Babowski's doing. And I love seeing, Steve Lombard being a scumbag. So, it's what makes comic books and the universes feel bigger and more whole and lived it. Exactly. It gives it a feeling of actual industry and everything when you have normal people here. So I love the idea of this. I do not like that they did this when we've barely gotten a hold of the title characters in the series. I know. Like the previous issue, if it had come much earlier in the series, hey, let's look at this from the point of view of somebody else, that would have been fine. But the problem with this, and I like the idea of that character. I even at the end, doesn't she become an intern at the Hall of Justice?
The Hall of Justice, yeah.
Yeah. It's really cool seeing a character want to do good and doing it the way that she knows how, which is by, handing out food and giving people water and then, volunteering to actually, work with, superheroes. I love that idea. I love the inspiration of that. It's just, to this point, we've barely got a feel for how these stories are impacting, the heroes in the book. So seeing how it impacts a normal person in that world, I wouldn't say it necessarily falls flat. It just doesn't feel like it's earned because, I don't know what, they think about this. So, and they're the ones that, accomplished it. So this isn't going to land as well as it should, because even though I like the general idea of it, it just didn't feel like it was necessary, frankly. Yeah.
And that's where I think I was with this issue. The intent, I'm sure, in the room, hey, I've got this idea about this average. You just I nutshelled it and you did too. But I don't know how Bart feels. I know how Bart and Connor feel about there's something screwy with the universe and we don't know how or when. Is this the future or the past? I think that's in another issue or two. But after this huge DC event that just happened, I don't know how Tim feels about it. So when this girl is woe is me, I don't know about going out and giving water. That's great, but it's not like Tim drinks the bottle of water and says, oh my gosh, we were barely hanging on by a thread. I thought this was all over. There's no exposition to that other than you telling me that she's doing something really good. She is, but for no other reason other than her dad says so and because we're told that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's, we're being told how they feel in dialogue, but we don't actually, see how they feel. We don't see what the actual emotional impact was. I will say that this issue gave us one of the most unintentionally hilarious sequences I've read in quite some time. I don't know if it's the one you're thinking of. I'm pretty sure it is. It's the one that we should think is super cool. Right. Where Batman and Drake are talking in the background.
Well, technically, that's not what Batman calls him.
Right. And then you see Superboy and Impulse in the foreground, just kind of, like, what are they talking about? But I don't know what it is. But that fourth panel where Tim is just looking sullen and Batman is walking off, I cannot imagine that in any way except for Batman walking off from this, emotional conversation going clunk, 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 because he's in this huge armor. And I can just imagine, just making this, after this really supposed to be, emotional. It's the first time, Tim and Bruce have seen each other in a while.
Right.
And and then seeing that, but then Batman just walking off and then making all the noise in the world is hilarious to me, and I don't think it's supposed to be.
No, not at all. And that was the same thing I had. And another thing, this isn't earned.
Yes,
it's not earned because a scene like this can work. We're not supposed to know what Bruce says to Tim, other than probably A, get out of that UPS uniform, B, your last name cannot be your superhero name. Yes. And I wanted to have a C just to be funny, but there could be some clunk, 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 clunk. I'm going to find some sound effect. I'm going to. And I'm going to do it under us talking through this whole section. Just to
please.
But it's, again, you can look at this panel and this page. You could hand this page to somebody and go, oh, wow, what are they talking about? There's nothing in this setting up boy, when Tim finally gets back, you can go, well, this could have been the issue, and I think it probably was, Alfred might have just died. So this could be the first opportunity that Bruce has to tell Tim that Alfred is dead. Maybe that's why he looks sad.
Yeah.
But there's no context here. There's no point in the story where Tim says, oh, we're back. I got to check in with Alfred. I got to get a hold of Bruce. He's probably worried sick to where I am. It's almost an anagrams or an allegory for the entire series. Nothing is happening from any of these panels that's supposed to connect any heartstrings for Connor, especially for the two people looking at it, Impulse and Superboy, to go, wow, that's heavy. I don't know what's said, but you could totally feel it. It's not there.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, most of the, beats in here are like that. Seeing Cassie with Wonder Woman, it's okay, cool.
Right.
Like I said, I'm not a big, huge, what do they call it on Let's Go? Flash appreciator.
Flash appreciator.
Because I think they call it Flash fan. And it's
Matt Ritchie is so mad at you right now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't dislike the Flash. It's just
no,
I never really got. I just never. It's just a lore that I've not gotten into. But I mean, I can appreciate how Bart kind of sort of officially meeting his, what is it, great grandfather for the first time, at least in this timeline, how that should be an emotional gut punch, because it's oh my gosh, they finally managed. But there, I mean, there's nothing there. At the very least, back when the original Young Justice series was around, there were Robin, Superboy, and Impulse titles that were being published. And I'm pretty sure even in Wonder Woman, Cassie Sandsmark was a supporting character in that book for a while before she became Wonder Girl. So, that there is context for why we should feel this way about these characters, whereas here, this is the only time we've seen most of these characters for the past several years. So, and then if this book isn't giving it to us, that without their own solo series or anything like that, we're not getting any idea of their, mental state, their personalities, anything like that. So we don't know how we should feel about it in this, other than I know who they are and what I should be thinking, but I'm not feeling that right now.
Yeah, well said. I think that's moments that we've been longing for, like Superman showing up and telling Connor, like, hey, we're going to go back to the Fortress of Solitude so we can figure this out. Should be very impactful. And there's little, editor's notes throughout this. See Action Comics for the House of Kent to see what awaits next. There was nothing drawing me over to that book to go, I got to see where this goes, other than Connor going, oh, I got to talk to Superman. Because I don't even still really know who Connor is yet in this book, and we're 17 issues into it because we're still trying to figure out how the heck is Connor Kent even back in this universe, other than, well, because of some shenanigans from Star Labs.
But it's like even if you've been keeping up with Action Comics, with like the House of Kent and everything that is supposed to tell this story, you barely get any more of it. Because, I mean, Bendis' writing style is just so, I don't know if like broad, decompressed, whatever is the right word for it, but it's trying to trade on what you should be feeling and just going from there without actually, earning it. Because, like, yeah, I want to think that it's awesome that Connor Kent is, reuniting with the Kents who may or may not be aware of who he is, but then they kind of realize who he is. I mean, that was the beautiful thing in, the Rebirth one-shot, with Wally, running around and trying to get somebody who knows who he is so he could still exist. Mm-hmm. And then, almost just fading away completely before Barry remembers. And then the two of them embrace. It's like, I mean, I have friends who have never read a Flash comic, have no real context to know or even care, the difference between Barry Allen and Wally West, but they read it and almost, burst into tears just because it was so masterfully done.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, in Action Comics, like you see the Kents, you almost get there. Like I almost got there. I was like, okay, I almost feel, like the little warm fuzzies, but even then it's just not quite grabbing me the way it should.
Yeah. And I think the other character, and I've got two people to mention here before we get out of this issue, is Naomi. And I didn't read her solo series, and I think that is kind of the problem with Tim, not so much, but kind of, but definitely Bart, Cassie, and basically everybody else. There's no other book where they're featured to play anything off of. Like Tim loosely will appear in Detective or Batman.
Yeah,
maybe
for like a panel or two.
A panel. But there's no story for them, where in the 90s, Tim had his own book, Connor had his own book, and Impulse and even Cassie to some degree was out there in and amongst stuff. So when you get to the team book, like there's a lot of heavy weightlifting that Bendis has to do, and I really think this book could have and should have been just the four principal characters of Robin, Wonder Girl, Impulse, and Superboy, and maybe add in Jenny.
Yeah,
and that had been just it. Because he's trying to juggle so much when you've got to cover so much backstory. And I think Tim, Connor, and Cassie get the lion's share of history building, and even that's done pretty loose. And the other person that has been absent from the last two books and is not in a single panel is Amethyst.
Oh gosh, yeah, you're right.
Where the heck has she been?
I mean, I don't know if it's supposed to be she's back in Gem World because she has her own miniseries right now. Yeah. But yeah, good point. I mean, I didn't really notice it, but that's not necessarily great. It's like I completely let it slip by that supposedly one of the core, members of this team was not there, and I didn't notice it until just now.
Yeah, and I didn't notice it, I think, until issue 18, which is where I think we're about ready to go here. So I hope you're sticking with this, folks. I want to say, like Batman 66, the best is yet to come.
Yes.
But probably not in this series of issues. I mean, probably like the biggest thing. I'll save it for final thoughts here. So, do you have anything else left for 17 before we go on?
No, I think that's all the gas in that tank.
Okay. Hey everyone, Rob here. This is where we're going to end this particular episode in typical ELYJ fashion. Jay and I had a 3-hour recording session to cram all of these issues in and the upcoming Young Justice 1998 series that we're getting back into. So we thought this would be a good placeholder, and when we come back on episode 20, we will take a look at issues 18, 19, and 20, the final issue of the Brian Michael Bendis-led Young Justice series. And then we are back to the classic 1998 and have some really cooler things on the horizon for the other avenues of Young Justice, be it the TV series that we're getting ready to have season 4 come out very soon on HBO Max. There's some talk of us doing maybe some video game stuff with Young Justice because there was a video game. And then the cartoon series as well has tie-in comics. So plenty of good Young Justice stuff to get back to. But like I said, this is where we're going to end this episode for the show. Come back next month in 2021. Can you believe that? 2021. So this will be the final episode of the year and closing out 2020 as kind of a downer and a bummer as 2020 was. We're not sure what the horizon's going to look like for DC and for our Young Justice boys and girls, but for this show in 2021, we're going to get back to some positivity. Okay, maybe we've got one more show in 2021 of the 2020 version of Young Justice. So we'll wrap that up in January of 2021 and give our final thoughts on that. And then it's back to 1998, folks. So on the behalf of Jay, this is Rob. You've been listening to the BatmanUniverse.net, but more importantly, you've been listening to Everyone Loves Young Justice. Thank you for a great year, and we will see you next year.